Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4 was every bit the runaway hit that people hoped it would be. And oh boy, did people hope it would be. Hype was explosive. People were running naked through the metaphorical streets of the internet, screaming their heads off about how Insomniac really did do good this time. And I am, coincidentally, a rather big fan of Spider-Man and his assorted games myself. I've made many videos about said games: Spider-Man 2000, Enter Electro, Spider-Man the movie game, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, Friend or Foe, Edge of Time, Amazing Allies, Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I Know My Spidey. So you might think I'd be salivating over Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4, frothing at the prospect. But the thing I loved so much about Spidey games was, well, the unique ways in which they portrayed the license. Spider-Man 2 let you web up and carry guys around and play with tons of fun physics. Spider-Man 3 had an in-depth combo system and brutally difficult combat. Spider-Man 2000 was one of the earliest character action games. Enter Electro had the most wildly varied gameplay objectives. Edge of Time had by far the best story and most nuanced melee mechanics. Ultimate Spider-Man was an explosive and highly creative collection of arcadey boss battles. Amazing Spider-Man 2 had the most responsive and free web-zipping mechanics. But Marvel Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4? Well, it looked like someone stapled Arkham and Spider-Man together, then threw in only the most agreeable AAA mechanics to ensure financial and critical success, with a small smattering of inspiration from previous games in the franchise. I wanted to play it, but I don't recall being overwhelmingly excited. But now, 5 years later, after the game's already been remastered 8 times, it's finally $15, and I'm down to try it out. So let's give these webs a shake. In Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4, you play as Spider-Man. He's got to take down the bad guys, but he's accidentally making more bad guys in the process. And to be fair, everything you expect is here. He's a ceaselessly good person who does everything he can for those around him, doesn't ask for favors or expect much in return. He's got a great sense of humor and is generally just joyful to watch. And it's for those reasons that seeing everything crumble around him is so tragic and entertaining. We want him to succeed, so he must suffer. He must suffer dearly. Anyway, the narrative and overall story presentation of the game is fine. It certainly understands who Spider-Man is, but it does do quite a few things I dislike, and I think greater effort could have been expended to make the world believable. To start with, the game does that obnoxious thing where it insists to you that time is of the essence, but it isn't. You can get your dozen or so reps in by working out with this piece of crumbling rubble, while comically large amounts of debris cascade past the camera, but the room will never collapse. You can watch these goons bully an innocent homeless woman indefinitely, and they'll never actually harm her until you intervene. You can wait as long as you like to take this time-sensitive, incriminating photo, you'll never get busted. You can dally outside of Kingpin's server room however long you like, they won't actually destroy the evidence that Spidey is so worried about. The timer only starts when you enter the vent right here, contrary to the dialogue. It feels like they were afraid to give real weight to the events unfolding around you in some circumstances. In a similar vein, you can just ignore crimes without penalty. It doesn't matter who you hear screaming for help, or how urgent it seems, you can swing right past them no problem, and no one will think less of you. So much for great responsibility. You might think I'm being unfair here. You might be saying, Addy, no Spider-Man games have consequences for ignoring crime. You'd be wrong. Amazing Spider-Man 2 did. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, if you actively ignored all the suffering around you, it would negatively impact your reputation, and to change the law enforcement's outlook on you. I thought this was brilliant, because again, it ties into the core theme of Spider-Man, the idea that he has a duty to help those who cry in pain, no matter how inconvenient it is for him. Themes and optional crime-fighting content aside, there are harrowing situations that Spidey is forced to endure by the main storyline. The aforementioned server room debacle is one such circumstance. You see, Spidey is raiding the Kingpin's tower, and the Kingpin naturally wants all evidence of his illegal activities destroyed, so he orders his henchmen to delete the data stored in the server room. His armed henchmen, with guns and rocket-propelled grenades. Also, the entire building is riddled with explosives. I want you to think about this with me here. If you knew a raid was coming, and you had time to plant explosives on every floor of your building, and fill every floor with tons of goons, why didn't you just rig the server room to explode? Why is that the one place you neglected to put a bomb? You blow up that room as instantly as you blew up everything else, and wow, how about that? The data is gone, you did it. Or just order your goons to shoot up the place, either works. There is no reason to have them slowly deleting all the information. One of the guys even shouts, "I can't delete it any faster." I beg to differ, buddy, you have a rocket. The game is full of little annoyances like this. Why did Peter leave a bunch of his Spider-Man stuff lying around his apartment when he has an overbearing landlord and is about to get evicted? Someone's gonna find that stuff. And for that matter, why also did Peter leave the spider suit repair equipment at Otto's place? If it had to be left there for whatever reason, maybe Otto would have noticed the technology is missing or something, then why not wait until much later in the night to access it? Because Peter showed up without absolute certainty that Otto would be gone, and he almost had his identity compromised as a result. Just wait until like 3 a.m., buddy, when the place is locked and you can sneak in as Spidey. To make matters worse, Otto comes away from the affair believing that Peter makes Spider-Man's equipment. How does Otto handle this? By sending information about gadget ideas for Spider-Man over email. Over email. Otto, my dude, that's not a secure platform. You've just exposed that Peter works for Spidey. Even if it's Otto's company email system, that's incredibly risky. Also, quick question, how do you know enough about Spidey's web fluid and suit design to draft up ideas for things like impact webbing? Are you just really good at guessing how it works? Then there's Sable mercenaries that just show up halfway through the game after Oscorp hires them, and it's like a couple minutes before they start declaring martial law and imprisoning innocent civilians just because they feel like it. Nothing Silver Sable or her mercenaries do makes any sense, and there's zero precedent for why they're able to declare civilians criminals or act like fascist hypercops. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 game did this concept much better with Oscorp's task force, which is functionally similar to Sable's mercenaries, but you saw Oscorp convincing the public of the task force utility and working within the law to legitimize their presence as a force of law and order. Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4 just has no interest in that kind of detail or believability. The characters are also just dumping exposition all the time, and they don't talk anything like real people. In case your brain is a sieve and you forgot what you saw literally 3 seconds ago, don't worry, they'll remind you. Oh boy, will they remind you. I had a lot more notes, but you get the idea at this point. I think the characterization and the logical progression of story beats is lackluster or occasionally contrived, and it sure doesn't get any better over time. Outside of the story proper, there are just some details I miss from previous Spider-Man games, like cars can't run you over anymore for some reason. I miss how they used to be able to send you flopping to the ground. In general, it's hard to make Spidey look stupid in this game, no matter how badly you fumble your movement. But I did my best. Spidey also disposes of bombs really stupid, like he explodes them over a crowded street where there's bound to be some damage to innocent civilians instead of over a lake. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, they literally made you run to the lake so you could dispose of it without causing so much undue suffering. What was wrong with that approach? A lot of these probably seem like nitpicks, and I acknowledge that, but I think it's also fair to expect better. There have been better Spider-Man stories with more consistent writing, more believable stakes, and more thorough consideration for presentational detail. That's not to say what's here is bad. It's wonderful that they got Yuri Lowenthal to record multiple takes for his voice lines, depending on how much strain Spidey is under during any given call. I love how much NPC dialogue there is during some of the Peter segments, and the choice to set this game 8 years after Spidey's origin story is a much appreciated spin on the formula that allows more freedom in storytelling. But overall, I don't see anything exceptionally creative or diligent here. The writing and style of storytelling feels like the product of a boardroom meeting. It is a perfectly normal AAA narrative made for mass appeal, and I had a perfectly normal time. If you've played previous Spider-Man games or the Batman Arkham games, you've got the basic idea for the combat in Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4. You hold a direction and punch dudes with square, you press circle to dodge when there's a Spidey sense of tingling. Those are just the basics though, and naturally the fun is in using Spidey's unique abilities, like web strikes or impact webbing, or basically anything web related. And it is all incredibly fluid. You can fling yourself across the map in seconds, rapidly adjusting your strategy to deal with the variety of enemy types is both exciting and tense, and the plethora of upgrades encourage a personal journey of sorts that enables you to find your own playstyle. But you know this, don't you? I practically sound like an advertisement, and that's because anything super unusual or experimental is just sort of missing here. The unprecedented freedom of Spider-Man 2 is gone, where you could do really strange and unique things with the physics and webbing. The heightened spatial awareness required by Spider-Man 3 is gone, because now you can just spam dodge all over the place with no repercussion. There's no advanced combo system either. It's similar to Amazing Spider-Man 2's combat, but more fluid and with a bit more impact. I don't mean to sound like I didn't enjoy myself, I did sometimes, but there's also very little to actually analyze, and though you do have many options, the game isn't too keen on making you use them. I played on the hardest available difficulty, and it felt akin to the normal difficulty in previous Spidey games. Part of this is because the AI is just incredibly ditzy, both in combat and in stealth. Just look at this. And this. And this. And this.
And I lost him. Good job, Spidey.
And I do suppose that's our stealth segue. The stealth in this game is functional, but like the combat, it's too easy and expects too little of the player. The enemies are dumb, they take a comically long time to notice you, and at no point did it feel like I was doing much but going through the motions. The proposed element of choice feels fake as well. Yeah, you can choose to stealth or to combat, but not only is combat nearly just as fast, but there's almost no practical benefit to stealth at all, outside of mission bonuses, that is. It all feels rather automated as well. If I can be allowed to bring up another old Spidey game, Spider-Man 2000 also had stealth, particularly in the bank level where there are hostages. If you do something stupid, you get spotted, and the hostages are shot. Sounds the same as Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4, right? Well, no. In Spider-Man 2000, it all happens in real time, and the player is always in control. The thug has to turn, aim, and then shoot. He can be interrupted during any step of this process by you, the player, using skilled input. But if you flub it up in Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4, a cutscene just triggers where the hostage is shot. It doesn't matter how fast you react. I'm not trying to say that one style is inherently better than another, but it's a case where the newer game could have done something more interesting, and simply didn't. Beanox's Amazing Spider-Man 2 handled similar stealth in a more challenging and engaging fashion. And you guessed it, the movement feels overly automated and too simplistic as well. I don't feel like Spider-Man escaping a crumbling building in this scene. Wanna know why? Because I'm holding R2 the whole time and lazily guiding him around with the left stick. That's all the input required. The same can be said for the swinging, where just holding R2 down and holding in a general direction allows you to get to your destination without any trouble. Whoopee. Again, they could have gone with something more interesting and simply didn't. That sums up almost my entire experience, really. It all just feels so normal. It is a perfectly normal AAA gameplay system made for mass appeal, and I had a normal time. So I played the game on the unlockable Ultimate difficulty too, and it's still too easy. All they did was up the enemy damage again. The problem wasn't that the enemies were dealing too little damage, it's that there's no decision making required to win. You can dodge out of every bad situation, so there's no risk-reward at play, and there's no reason to try. So if you were curious about that, well, there you go. If this game is meant to cater to everyone, then I'm not catered to, because I like to think while playing, and this combat is brain dead. Games like Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4 are strange to me. As much as I enjoy having my analytical standards, and as fair as I believe them to be, it's hard to apply them to games like this. My process is usually to ascertain the intention of a game, and then from there, judge how well it succeeds at its intentions. But most art also wants to be something. Most art cares about having a goal besides be liked by everyone. And it feels like Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4's goal is to simply be liked by everyone. All the decisions it makes, all the features it includes, all the design it harbors, it's only there so it can be enjoyed by as many people as possible with as little friction as possible. Anything interesting or alienating has been scrubbed clean from its existence. That doesn't make it bad, but it nonetheless deeply bothers me. When people think back on this game, what are they going to remember, do you think? What is going to endear them to it, as opposed to the other Spider-Man games? Will they even be able to say? Because as far as I can see, what makes it so appealing is only that it tries to be so appealing. That it was good at understanding contemporary trends and delivering a hyper-polished iteration on those trends. Rather than only talk about that, I wanted to discuss the ways in which it is similar and dissimilar to other games in its own franchise, as well as the different writing standards of deeper character-driven narratives and what makes all those things special. So I'm not here to tell you that Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 on the PS4 is bad, or that I didn't like it, just that it feels existentially awkward to me, and that I hope we someday get back to a place where AAA single-player games are weird and experimental. But if not, hey, there's always more of our history to uncover and enjoy instead. Because this whole thing where games don't trust the player to do anything themselves, handhold you through the entire experience, and refuse to have a personality, it ain't working for me. Howdy, hello, you there, yes, you. Did you know that you personally, right there, you can fund my love? Figuratively speaking. You can literally buy an expression of that love, though. You see, I have a Patreon with 4 sparkly tiers, all named really cute and fruity things because I like being a fruit. And speaking of Patreon, there are several lovely patrons who are already signed up. Patrons I will list for you now. My wonderful supporters are iPompous, Anonymous, Jay, Marth Sinclair, Call Me Haley, Sam Anderson, Some Call Me Anto, Wapoza, Menthorse, Mike Hansen, and Kay Storkson. Thank you all so much for your time and thoughts, and I'll talk to you soon.